Welcome to another Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain and Business Intelligence video. Today I would like to show you how you can analyze your Dynamics 365 Finance Supply Chain data in Microsoft Fabric. And we will do this by mirroring an entity database into Fabric and load it into a Lakehouse and finally connect with PowerBI Desktop to the Lakehouse. So to get started, I have Dynamics 365 Finance here open, the Azure portal and Power BI, and the first thing I want to do is to create an export from my entities to Azure SQL database, and I have to create a new Azure SQL. But before I will do this, I will check in my Power BI Fabric instance on the Workspace settings on the license information, the region for my trial. It says my trial is in North Europe, so I will deploy my Azure SQL database also to North Europe. So let's go to the Azure portal, and within the Azure portal I'm going to create a new Azure SQL. We find this here in the marketplace. And the first here is Azure SQL, and we create a new instance. This means a new server and a new database. And I'm going for a single database here because we only need one. So I have here my Azure subscription. Don't get confused if some words are in German. It's because I'm working on a German version. And I'm going to create a new resource group and call it CRP D365. This should be available for me, and the name of the database, this will be my ERP D365 entity DB, and we have to create a new server. That will be my ERP D365 entity SRV. Let's check if this name is not available. Demo. Yeah, this is available. And like I said, I'm going to place this in North Europe, so this matches my trial capacity license for Fabric. And I'm going for SQL and Entra authentication. I will set the admin to my user. And I'm also setting here a SQL admin. That's just for convenience, so we can look up the data using the SQL Server Management Studio easy and for some legacy applications. This will be a development instance, but we have to make sure if we want to create a database mirroring in Fabric, it has to be at least 100 DTUs. So I'm changing the size here to DTU based, and I'm changing it to at least 100 data transfer units. This should be standard as 3. And this should be okay. I'm going for local redundancy, that's enough for me. We are using a public access point. We will allow Azure services, and I want to add my local IP address as well. TLS is okay. So let's check next. Defender, don't need Defender. What I want to activate is server identity. This is needed for the database mirroring in Fabric. This is okay. I don't want any data, I just want a plain SQL database. Case insensitive, exon sensitive, that's okay for my Dynamics installation, this will fit. And let's deploy the SQL Server instance. The deployment is succeeded and we can go to the resource and check if everything is here that we need. So we are here on our server and we have a connection string. That's what we will need for Dynamics 365. And we can use a query editor to connect to the database directly within here in the Azure portal. And you can see we have an empty database, no tables, and now we will populate this with entity data from Dynamics 365. So I will need the connection string here with SQL authentication. Now we are in Dynamics 365 and from the data management workspace we can configure the entity export to database. And I call it Azure SQL, you can call it whatever you want to, and provide the string here and the password. Very secure password, and a limitation at the moment when using mirroring in Fabric we cannot use columns to index, so I'm going to deactivate column store. Dynamics says this is okay, our connection has been validated, it sees that the standard has 3 instances of SQL Server, and the next is to publish the entities. So from the data management workspace to the entity list, I'm going for 2 entities, the sales order header and the sales order lines. And here we have the sales order headers v3, and by say publish, selecting the SQL Server instance and publish, this will start a job in the background and the job will create the table definition in our SQL Server. The same goes for the sales order lines. Select the entity, publish, choose the SQL Server, product version ID will not be available, yeah, okay. That's okay for me. And we're going to publish this here as well. Now this may take a few seconds until the definition is created and the create table statement executed. We will now switch back to our query editor and again log on to our SQL database. And as you can see, we have here both tables, the sales order header v3 and the sales order line v2 staging table. Only the definition, no data. This is the next step. So back to Dynamics 365, back to the data management. Now I will create an export job for these entities. Call it whatever. And here from add entity, the sales order header v3 entity. The target format, here we have to choose Azure SQL that has been configured as entity database connection, and we're going for full push. And next we are going for the sales order lines. Again, Azure SQL is a format, we're using a full push. Now we have these two entities, and now I'm going to export the data using this manual export. In real life you would now also create a job to export the data periodically in a time frame that suits you. Don't know, every hour, every 15 minutes, once a day, whatever is your need. Now the job is running and it is exporting the data, both sales order headers and sales order lines, into our entity database. This may take a few seconds, and then we will check the database in Azure Portal again if we can see the data. The job is finished. You can see we have 175 headers and 1732 lines. Now when we go back to Azure Portal in our query editor and call a select on the header, we should see some data in here, and you can see this is sales order header entity that this has been exported to our SQL database, and the same goes for the lines. So this is nothing new. Export entities to an external database has been here for a very long time, but what we will do now, we will try to mirror this database into our Fabric workspace. So from Power BI, I'm here in a Fabric workspace. You see it's a premium capacity because we have here this diamond, and I can change the type of things I'm doing, but that's not really an issue because whatever you choose here, when you say you want to create a new item, you can always go here and find whatever you want. And what we want to do is to mirror a database, so it can create a mirror on an Azure SQL database, and we have to provide here a new connection, and I'm going here back to the connection string because I need the server name and the database name. So this is the server name, and my database name is here after initial catalog. So now we can choose if we want to use SQL authentication or if we want to use OAuth authentication. Both is possible. If you use the organizational account, I'm going for the SQL authentication here. And connect to the database. As you can see, the connection has succeeded, and it suggests to use these entities. If you have more entities and you don't need it, you can select or unselect it and use this automatically mirror feature, which I'm not using. And there is one limitation, not for us but in general, that will go away in a few moments, I think, because it was announced at the Fabricon that now we have to use tables with a primary key. We have a primary key here, but this can be a problem if you're using your own data and tables without the primary key. So let's say connect, and this will create a mirror database in Fabric. Mirroring takes a while. The replication is now starting, and we have to be patient until the first replication is done. So in our case this is only a small replication that contains 2 entities. So I would suggest that you grab a cup of coffee, make a break if you're doing this at your workplace, and after a few minutes come back and again check if the replication is finished. Welcome back from the break. As you can see, the replication is finished and we have 175 headers and 1732 rows now in our database. So here in Fabric we have a new artifact called ERP D365 Entity DB, and this is a replication from our Azure SQL where Dynamics 365 is populating our external database. So in the next step I want to create a Lakehouse and add a table to my Lakehouse and combine it with a CSV file, create a semantic model with a measure and provide it for my PowerBI users. So I'm creating a new Lakehouse. And call it sales, or whatever you want to call it in your purpose. And the good thing in Fabric is that we can link stuff that already exists. Now from tables we want to create a new shortcut, and we're going to our internal sources on our OneLake. In our OneLake is an mirrored database, and we can use this database and select the headers, for example, because we want to use the headers in our sales lakehouse. Now it is creating a link to the table, and when the preview is loaded you should see the data from the sales order headers in the lakehouse. So here is the preview from the sales order headers in our Lakehouse, and like I said, I now want to add an additional data source, not from Dynamics, but it's a CSV file that has been exported from some other third-party system. So I'm going to Files and upload a new file. Yeah. Sometimes you have to be patient. And in my download folders I have a CSV file with some customer data. I'm going to upload this into files. And now that I have this file here uploaded in my Lakehouse, I want to create a table based on this CSV file. So I can say load into table, into a new table, and call this table customers. This is a CSV file with headers, and I'm using this separator. And by clicking load, Fabric will now create a table based on Parquet files from my CSV file. This also takes a few seconds. And here it is. Now we have an additional table called customers, and when you go to view files you can see this is converted into a Parquet format, which is a specialized, analyzed, optimized binary format. So now we have two tables, customers, as you can see, with name, address and some other stuff, and our headers. And now we want to create the semantic model, and I'm changing to my SQL endpoint here. It's not always working. And from reporting, I'm going to manage default semantic model, and I want to add these two tables to my semantic model, to my default semantic model. This may also take a few seconds. And here it is. This is the customer table and the sales order header. And as a dynamic specialist, you may probably know that we have an order account somewhere here in the sales order header table called ordering customer account number. This is this here, and this will match the customer ID from my second table. It's a one-to-many. This is okay. So one customer can have multiple headers, and one header belongs to one customer, and the filter direction goes from customer to our header table. Now we can also add a measure, for example, and I'm using a very simple measure here that counts the amount of records for the customer. Let's call it of orders, and this is just a count rows from the sales order header staging. If this turns white here, like in my case, don't get confused, expand and collapse, and it's back here. As much as I know, it is not possible at the moment to create a pure measure table like you would do this in Power BI, so you have to place your measures on some tables within your semantic model that's fit for your purpose and where you find your measures. Okay, so with a semantic model, we have two tables, we have a relationship, and we have a measure, and now we can hand over this semantic model to our Power BI developers or power users or whatever your users are in your company. Maybe you are a user, so you will connect to this semantic model. Let's open Power BI Desktop. And from the One Lake Data Hub, this will connect to my Fabric instance. And as you can see, we have here the semantic model of my Lakehouse. And I'm selecting this semantic model. And by clicking Connect, Power BI will create a direct query to my semantic model. And you can see we have the customers, we have the orders here. We have in the model view the relation from the customers, filtering selection to the sales order header. And now we can start developing our Power BI report and maybe add here a sales region, for example. So we have the state. This can be a nice filter, and we can add a table to view some data from our headers. So maybe the sales order number could be an interesting value, and some information maybe from the customer, the first name, the last name, whatever you want. And of course, because we have created a measure, we want to add this as well. So I'm going to use my card visual here, and this card visual will use the field measure number of orders. So we have 175 orders in total. This is okay. And now when we select Upper Austria, this should be plus or not. Yes, it takes a few seconds to calculate it because we have a direct query here, so it's working against the model. And it says in Upper Austria we have 26 orders and in total 175. So, to summarize, what have we done? We have a Dynamics 365 Finance instance, we have created a SQL server, we have configured the entity export into a Bring Your Own database or BYOD database in Azure. We have created a mirroring into Fabric. We have created a Lakehouse. We have loaded data from the mirror database and additional data from a CSV file. We've created a semantic model and added a measure as well. And now we are connected using PowerBI Desktop to the semantic model hosted in Fabric. I hope this video was helpful for you and would be happy if you leave a thumbs up or a comment. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.